Right, right. Some things I was thinking about as Sarah was talking, the one that I just kind of touched on briefly was finding a name that is free of any kind of negative connotation. I think it's kind of in line with what we just talked about. Things that invoke a particular prejudice, and because certain terms tend to carry connotations with people, and sometimes it's not. You would have no idea what people feel that way and why. But you want to be really careful not to use a word that has a negative, that evokes a negative feeling from somebody. And that, I think to some degree that's led a lot of these very abstract names that we see, currently for websites and modern companies, but also probably drove a lot of the huge amount of effort that went into picking names like Kodak and that kind of thing, where they really did a lot of focus group to make sure this name doesn't anywhere in their current or future target market offend somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the age of political correctness, right? How that applies to marketing. And when you decide to very actively, intentionally go against that wave, can be pretty pronounced, and have a lot of impact. But it's such a gamble move, right? I mean, that could just backfire horribly and just fall deadpan and like, oh, okay, you're trying to be edgy. Cool,
Right. Sanka is a brand that was famously repurposed. That was an 80s brand of decaffeinated coffee that had not a good connotation, and they have since rebranded they sold the name. I don't know the whole story here because it's actually really pretty entertaining finding the facts. I think that they've made success out of it, but it is a product that has nothing to do with decaffeinated coffee, and so it's kind of in effect, I think there may be a tie-in conceptually to that. So that's a case where they took a brand that had a lot of name recognition, but that name recognition wasn't associated with a positive experience.
Poor for Senka. Poor outcome. So certainly being unique and memorable is pretty important there, right? So, we talk about having like a positive impression. Generally when people have a positive impression, like they're gonna think, hey, this is a brand that I want to continue interacting with. Sarah, glad you could make it back in here. Hey, we love internet, right? So we're talking about memorable and unique names and what that means to branding. So I'll turn it back over to you.
I don't know where you guys were because
we literally just open it up. So you can take that wherever you feel like. What are your thoughts on memorable and unique names and how that's beneficial for branding?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, your name is going to be what the main carrier for when people refer you to others. So having a name that people can remember, and not only so they can share it, but so they can remember it and use it again, is really, really important, because as we've kind of mentioned before, word of mouth marketing is the most profitable. So being able to have something that works in that way is really, really good. And then also, if like we talked about, I think we talked about this also before, if the silly commercials that people remember and they continue to talk about, having that name that people can pull out of the air and share with each other, that's really, really important to growing your brand and to getting more business. So, I mean, people, you can bookmark something and go back to it and remember the company in that moment. But if the company is going to grow and people are going to share it and talk about it, you want to have a very memorable name.
Yeah, and it's often a difficult.
Oh, go on.
I was going to say it's often a difficult balance between memorability and niche. That often the memorable name tends to be something that's really a generic word, which then might get confusing to some people because there's other things with similar naming.
Yeah.
But if you go too niche, then you've got something that isn't nearly as memorable.
Yeah, and that leads us right into you want to have a company name that isn't going to be confused with someone else. And a really, really great example of this, I'll start this one off. Also right here in Colorado, there are 2 restaurants called Capital Grill. One is spelled Capitol and one is spelled Capital. One of them is a very, very nice fancy steakhouse, and one of them is a little diner. And the 2 places are probably like maybe 15 miles away from each other. But every time anyone mentions it, you have to specify, is it this one or is it this one? And that's confusing. It's probably, I mean, I know which one came first, but it's probably wasn't really the best choice for the other one because there's always that confusion.
I've got another example.
Yeah.
Brothers Bar and My Brothers Bar in Denver, which are not the same at all, and they're absolutely competing in the same space. To my knowledge, the rule of thumb for intellectual property, which this touches on that as well, if you're that you cannot take somebody else's name if it is deceptively similar to the same market. Meaning, if somebody could mistake you, if one of your customers could mistake them for you and give your work to them, that is infringement. But I've also noticed that the burden of enforcement falls on the person who owns the brand, which means often people don't challenge it. But the point that I think you made that's really well taken is if you've got the same name as somebody else, they're not going to remember who you are. They're going to have a hard time finding you at the right time.
Yeah. You don't want to send somebody to the diner when you want them to meet you at the steakhouse or the other way around. Hi, this is Sarah from Denver Data Web. Thanks for watching. Please like our video and subscribe for future digital strategy chats. You can also visit our website at denverdata.com or find us on social media at Denver Data Web.